The technology aspect of that bond has almost 65 million in infrastructure. That really is about improving the infrastructure. It's not much about devices for the students, but it is about enabling all the facilities and classrooms that we do that. There is a lot more detail on our website, so I encourage you to visit that as well. We're sometimes asked what happens if the bond doesn't pass. In honesty, there hasn't been much discussion about a plan B, and that's probably okay, because that could raise a lot of consternation as well, and then allegations of trying to spread fear and panic and all this stuff. So from what I've seen, there's been no public discussion by council and board about a plan B. If necessary, then we will face that at the time, but there is no backup plan at this point. Also asked about security enhancements in some of these schools or in the bond program. While it's not part of the bond program, we do have about $7.5 million in our budget for physical security improvements in the schools. All schools will be brought up to a minimum number of cameras per school. That would be 16 elementary schools, 32 middle, and 64 in high schools. All elementary schools will receive a card access system, access control on 8 exterior doors, and all elementary schools will receive entrance access system, which includes camera, intercom, electronic door lock at main entrance. Someone asked a question yesterday about security at school, and truth is there's never 100% guarantee. If someone is absolutely crazy, they can do damage. And so we can't stand ever and say guaranteed safety, but we can certainly do things and train people and have folks be aware and alert. A couple of misperceptions about either our growth or our needs. Someone reportedly said we had marble flooring in the new high school in Rollsville. You are wise enough to know that you can actually polish concrete to a level that looks like marble. So that's what occurred in that school. No joke. Why aren't we giving employees raises rather than wanting to spend all this money? I think you also understand that you can incur recurring expense for salary and employee with what is really one-time money. And so this is about facility, as you know, brick and mortar and improvements that can be spent once. You could never put ongoing recurring expense into general obligation bonds and things of that nature. What about all those other classrooms that you could move kids out of, like band, chorus, and special programs, needs, and this and that? An allegation that supposedly we would have space if that were the case. I think you understand too that those classrooms are in use by large groups of kids at one time. Even the classrooms for students with special needs, there are regulatory requirements in terms of size, additional adults that are often in those classrooms to help. So our rooms are in use, our mobiles are in use, our mobiles will continue to be in use even with this program. Let me try and get questions at the end. It is costly to move mobiles, but they do serve fluid needs that we have as enrollments change from school to school. I will share also that I experienced that of a consumer coming into Wake County a month or so ago, learning of one high school that might have been in an area that I would have considered that was capped, and what that meant, and a realtor who was extremely good at talking about the links to the school system. These are your lookups, this gives you the zone, and it appears to be that generally you're well informed with that technology and that our school system keeps that fairly current, and that is a good tool for you. And it was for me as well. Let me move to graduation rates, because that was a subject that has been public for a while. The press did a release a month or so ago. Our board spent time on this issue yesterday. We've been relatively stable at about an 80% graduation rate. The converse of that, though, means that 2 in 10 kids are not graduating. street, unemployed, perhaps on the way toward college. It is an area that we will be doubling down on in Wake County and try to move that needle up. There can be a lot of reasons why we're flat, but they're not excuses. And so we've already begun working with our high school principals and all of our programs, because it is a pre-K all the way up. But our high school people do have the last 4 years with a lot of those students, and ninth grade is often a year in jeopardy for a lot of students, so we recognize that. While we inched up a little bit, when Wake County fell below the state average, that was a dark day, because Wake County has hardly ever been below a state average. So a call to arms, a call to action, and we will be spending extra time on that. It was interesting in my meeting with principals recently, a week or so ago, in talking about what has occurred over time, when they were describing some of the resources that have been removed or halved as a result of budget reductions. And some of those resources very directly were there for the sake of keeping kids in school and avoiding dropouts. So we've got to revisit that. Talk about Common Core, and I saw the chamber group and the business group yesterday officially supported Common Core. And you can clearly take any position you want on Common Core, but it is an improvement over the last version of expectation, level of teaching, kinds of skills we're looking for in our students. So it is reasonable to support this. Does it have its problems? Of course it does. Anything like that does and will. And so you constantly seek to take advantage of the best parts of that and then improve over time as you go along. But I share this with you because our first release of results, which in the first year, last year, our people were teaching Common Core in North Carolina. They were also their students were being measured on it. At the same time, they were teaching something that was very different and new. And if you think about quality control at the end of a production line, in the first time that you're changing the production line, you wouldn't expect quality control to look very good at the end, because you've got to come back and retune based on what your outcome looks like. That will be the case clearly with our students and the results. The results you'll see for our kids, if you try to compare them to prior numbers, that's a false exercise. We believe the numbers will look low and abysmal. We think we see that occurring in other states in the nation. When it's finally released, which I think probably will not now be until November, according to DPI, you will see folks want to compare and drag back to prior scores and say, oh Lord, the sky's fallen, et cetera, et cetera. I raise this simply I raise it in order to lower your expectations. It is a first year of something very new and very different. And I sometimes draw a comparison to the fact that we know right now what our speed is in running a 400 meter. Now we're going to be measured in how long it takes to run a steeplechase. They're completely different. And yet folks will go, wow, look at that English score compared to this one. And I'm just giving you a heads up now. And I think the release in the press today did a nice job of trying to describe that as well. That will be our benchmark year. That is the year from which we will build and then seek to move from there. So it's a reasonable change. It's worth the change, but there'll probably be a bit of a jolt when those scores are released. And we're not going to be alone. Not that there's company in having others, but I just wanted to give you a heads up on that. And the reason I want to share that, it's a really different way of thinking and what we expect. You and I probably all went through school where it was about retaining knowledge, and then you needed to prove that you had retained it, and you could then bring it back out. Really what Common Core is trying to do, and what we're all trying to do now in this second decade already of the 21st century, is those skills that business folks say they need, higher ed needs, military needs, the ability to work in groups, a sense of their position in the global world and the economy, the ability to identify problems, talk about solutions, and think creatively. Stuff that is not easily reduced to a test, if you think about it. That is where Common Core is pushing us correctly, but it takes time, and it does require a cultural change in the classroom for teachers to think differently about how they design their lessons and things of that nature. But I want to share with you a problem that the 8th graders face recently out of the Common Core instruction, and it's a math problem in 8th grade. And just think about where you might have been in your career knowing this data and information.
I just want to take a picture.
You know.
I want to prove you were here.
So, it's a picture, it's not video, right?
It's a picture.
All right.
But I love the math question.
Yeah. I haven't given them the answer to it yet. So it's a word
I've got to
problem.
keep coming to these so I can get the answer.
You remember how we hated word problems in math? It was like, what's all this
I got a
stuff?
picture, you
So,
can get a picture of him.
8th grade. A trainer for a professional football team keeps track of the amount of water players consume throughout practice. The trainer observes that the amount of water consumed is a linear function of the temperature on a given day. Some of your mouths are already dropping. The trainer finds that when it is 90 degrees, the players consume about 220 gallons of water. When it's 76 degrees, the players consume about 178 gallons of water. Part A, write a linear function to model the relationship between the gallons of water consumed and the temperature. That's not funny. That's right. Part B, explain the meaning of the slope in the context of the problem. Yeah. So they've got to be graphing, they've got to, yeah, that's 8th grade. Clearly, levels have dropped. That's the global competition. That's where we are. And so when we talk about tougher, different, remember that. It's a good example of what we're doing now in an 8th grade classroom. Tough stuff, but the right stuff. So that doesn't change quickly. So I hope that helps some. Some challenges operationally, continuing from the fire hose turned your way. Transportation, significantly improved from last year, significantly. Not without tremendously hard work. Do we still have pockets that we're adjusting? Of course. Do we have some buses that are pretty full? Yeah. And that's interesting in itself, by the way. Number one, we have more students. Number two, we've actually been gaining riders since school opened. So you're constantly picking up new stops, recalculating. And then we're also trying to operate as efficiently as possible, because if you don't have your buses maxed, then you're wasting dollars as well. So it's a real balance between adjusting routes, new families moving in. We drove our children to school for the first 2 weeks, but now we want to use the bus. I mean, all those variables are in play, but we're continuing to work through that. And our folks are very responsive, and they do work through each one and follow up. Student assignment. I know you have no interest in this. Actually, with little fanfare, but actually a lot of work, our board last spring did pass an updated student assignment policy. And I'll share what we sort of call the 4 pillars of that policy. And I want you to think about those pillars, because each pillar represents sort of a customer group, if you will, or an outcome. And what the board is saying is all 4 of those need to be balanced. Pillar 1 is student achievement. You know, providing an opportunity for families to select calendar, magnet, and application schools. It's also about minimizing high concentrations of low-performing kids, and also about minimizing high concentrations of students from low-income families. So student achievement is one pillar. Second pillar is about stability. Providing an opportunity for students to remain at the school which they're attending, euphemistically called stay where you start. Also providing an opportunity for siblings to attend the same school at the same time, and providing an opportunity for year-round track calendar alignment for the siblings. So the second piece, stability. So you've got student achievement, you've got stability, and you've got proximity. allowing students living within the immediate vicinity of the school, defined by the assignment plan to attend that school, and also minimizing splitting of neighborhoods when developing base attendance areas, you know, as new schools come out. Proximity. And then the fourth, operational efficiency, minimizing under-enrolled schools, minimizing overcrowded schools, and maximizing transportation efficiencies. Four things that sit on a two-sided scale, right? And we're trying to balance all these things. Not easy, but I share that because that's the intent of the board. It's our hope as administration to create as great a balance among those four pieces as we can with minimal disruption. You know, that takes practice, it takes time, and it takes incremental adjustments. So I share that to the extent possible so that you understand really what assignment by itself represents and what the board has said we need to try and address in all those pieces. And if you hit any one of those four pillars too heavy, the other three go out of whack. So it's very much a balancing act. The drivers of student assignment clearly are growth. Where are the new seats? Where are the new neighborhoods? Where are folks moving? And additional new schools. You can't just open a new school and then say we will wait for everyone to move in to fill it up. There's a balance between how many classes you move into there to get it started as it fills, planning for the expansion. Budget. Carolina's been hit hard over the last few years in its education dollars, and a lot of the dollars do come from the state in North Carolina. This past year, we were able to balance up through use of local dollars in some categories, through moving state dollars in others, through reduced positions, through handling a reduction of positions through attrition, and actually there were no, quote, layoffs of any employees. By and large, we came out of it okay. We had to put a freeze on teacher assistants for several months, not knowing what the General Assembly was going to do, and that slowed a lot of processes up. And then by the time we were able to fill them, it had gotten late in the summer before we knew. But the effect of all that has been our teacher corps that for several years now has no raises. And other costs for them, like healthcare, have gone up. So the net effect is really a loss for them on a regular basis. I worry tremendously about our teachers. Bless them for still being there today as we're here and they're in classrooms. It would be easy to say, why do they keep doing that? And regrettably, more and more are saying, no more. You may have personal situations that are close to home where you know this has happened. But if you consider the national vogue for public K-12 bashing, if you look at our state legislation recently and some sentiment, it's very hard to want to be a public servant in many respects, not the least of which to be a teacher. So I do worry about them. I wish there was something we could do quickly. There isn't. But I ask you, well, I'll hold that ask. A little bit of a look ahead, some of the pieces that we've got, I'll get there. Some of the pieces that we're looking to for the future. I've got some key positions that are administrative in leadership that have been vacant for several months. That the board and prior interim superintendents said leave open until they finally bring someone in. So there's some key positions there in technology, in communications, in operations, for example, that need to be filled. Recent audits about both gifted program, the AIG, as well as Nightdale schools, some of the Nightdale schools, and the challenges that some of our schools and populations face in East Wake are giving us marching orders to be working on some things that the board and administration are accepting. The School Safety Task Force, which was commissioned several months ago, was reported back to the board this summer. 15 recommendations And administration now has those, and within the next couple of weeks, we'll be bringing our response back to the board, our reaction to the recommendations, what makes sense, what we can do soon, if there's a cost, what it would be, those sorts of things. So stay tuned, that'll be very public. And then also taking a look at our discipline policies as they relate to infractions at what we call level 1, and it is the crime matching the punishment and vice versa. So the board reasonably so is asking us to look at that, because if you start putting a student out when maybe they don't need to be put out, you're already putting them behind, you're increasing potential for dropout, et cetera, and that spirals continuously. So those are a few pieces on the near term for us and the board to look at. What would I ask you to do? I made reference to the fact to our teachers and our employees, all of them. Try and go out of your way to thank a teacher. It's really simple, doesn't cost anything. But if you're standing in the grocery store and you hear two people talking and one of them sounds like a teacher, interrupt. All right, where do you teach? Just want to thank you for hanging in there and working for the kids. It gives those teachers a chill for a stranger to say something like that to them, and it goes a long, long way. So please, it's a simple thing for you to do, but right now it's about all we can do for them. But it would help. So please take care of that. Got time for question and answer? Yes, ma'am.
So my
But
question
please, if I may, before you start, please be respectful of each other and of everyone's time as we're going through this, and of Dr. Merrill's time. So I would ask that, again, please be respectful of each other, and let's try to limit to one question each. Thank you.
What's your cut time?
We're good.
Okay.
We get up about 20 minutes ago.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
my question was about the teacher salaries.
Yeah.
The fact that North Carolina is 48 in the nation is disgusting. And I don't understand exactly, you skipped over it very quickly when you were talking about the bond referendum. Why can't teacher salaries be put in the bond? I'm sorry, and I don't know the
Okay.
logistics of it, but I think that is one of our challenges as real estate agents, to convince someone to come here, A, because of what we've gone through, just overall the reassignment issues, et cetera, and then they shoved that in our faces very recently, personally. I have no answer to that. So what is your plan for that?
Well, I don't have a plan for raising teacher salary because it can't be paid for in a bond. Bond can only, general obligation bonds can only be sold and put to the public for single expenses, like one-time expense for a school or infusion of technology. You can't sell general obligation bonds to support ongoing expense, which is what teacher salary is, and compensation and the operating budget. So really, your school budget's divided into capital and operating. Operating recurs year after year. Capital can be one time. It can be high one year and down the next. The bond program is to support the capital side of that budget. But any raises or anything else have to happen in the operating side. There just has been no money to do it, and my short-term observation is that the growth we experience gobbles up any dollars that might be available to go toward compensation or anything else, because you've got 3,000 new kids coming in, you've got materials that need to be bought, you've got transportation that needs to be expanded. So had there been any dollars over the last several years, the growth eats it first before you can get to increasing base costs like teacher salary. You can put it in a budget and you can ask for additional local dollars from county commission, but they make that decision on local expense. So it is a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, it's hard to watch good teachers leave, and I've had two boys go through the school system, and I've seen several, the Northeast or other places where they actually get paid what they're worth.
I can't blame them.
Yeah.
And neighboring states right now are more competitive.
Yeah, for sure.
Virginia's paying a lot better, I think South Carolina. So that's, well, you'll continue to hear us chafe at that. Legislators can make a difference, but right now they're generally more interested in addressing the profession itself with legal changes, with teacher compensation with teacher career status, things of that nature, grievances, than they are compensation for employees. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much for your time
Sure.
for coming out today. I'm a mother of 7 first, and then I'm a realtor. And so I had the
You're part of the problem.
I had the awesome opportunity to be a part of the UNC TV. They had the Department of Public Instruction, and June Atkinson gave a wonderful presentation, which airs tomorrow on UNC TV, about the Common Core and essential higher standards. The concern that I have with the Common Core is not going away because it's already been voted and it's here. But when you have kids that are already performing low, what is the plan? What is the plan of action to equip the teachers to be able to teach those students and equip with the actual Common Core that's coming to play? That's a big concern because one of the things says, okay, teacher salaries are low, but your kids aren't performing. And so someone coming in, that's what they're going to see. They're not going to see the big picture. So
That is being used against us. I don't have the right term for it, but in order to help teachers, professional development, spend the time to learn how to teach differently, to intervene early in kids' careers and their skill deficiencies, if you will. That training takes time. It also takes money. And what happens to public ed all too often is training dollars get cut early. Corporations know better than to cut training dollars. Public ed seems to always go there because it's generally 85% of the school system's budget is salary and comp. So you've only got 15% left in the PD, in the other pieces, supplies, materials, whatever it might be. So you brought in, we brought in Common Core in 1 year. We didn't even have time to train the teachers. We're trying to get back to that now. But then the other dilemma is, well, golly gee, that takes time. When do we get the extra time with those teachers to spend time? It's really a vicious cycle. And there's nothing to do other than turn to our teachers and say, we know you're dying, but this is what we've got to do. Which is why I'm telling everyone, my principals, everyone, hold your teachers up, support them, do the best we can. So the training needed to get our teachers to the level to do better work is critical right now. We've got a few structural pieces in place in Wake County right now where we're starting to push that out. But that change takes time. But genuine issue. Yes, ma'am, on the aisle.
I'm fairly new to the area, but I guess you've changed the standards, so it's, getting a little tougher for kids to graduate. Graduation is at 20%, 20% off, I guess. So I don't understand why they went away from the 10-point scale. It seems like you raised standards and then made it harder.
10-point scale for.
A C is 70, a B is 80.
Oh, yeah, I have no history on that, and I don't know whether to kick it in the bill or just leave it alone. Yeah, I don't know. I know our board and committee a week or so ago said they wanted to revisit the grading scale, but I don't even know what that means at this
Is there
point.
a way that we can find out about that? Because I get asked that all the time by clients.
It's probably in policy on our website, but that's a piece of the fire hose I haven't caught yet. But I think it's probably addressed in policy. If not, if you send me, if you can't find it, send me an email, jmerrill@WCPSS.net, 2 R's and 2 L's, and I'll try and track it down. Because if it's not in policy, it could be in R&P, which you wouldn't see, and then I'd have to get it to you. Yes, ma'am, here and then there.
Jen Crow, former elementary principal in Wake County Schools, and I retired so I could make more money in real estate. But I did come to you with a solution that we were working at one point in Wake County, and that was to identify some of the reasons that kids were dropping out of school. I have friends, I have clients whose kids graduated from high school in Wake County and either couldn't get into college or couldn't afford it or couldn't get a job with the unemployment rates. So they were looking at possibly adding more tech programs to the high school. And I'm from New York, where they had BOCES, where they could do mechanics, cosmetology, agriculture, and things like that. And at one point in time, I was joining a task force to see if they could come up with a program that offered hands-on skills and an alternative program in the high school level where we could get graduates the rate increased and to graduate kids who would then have some skills to go right into the workforce or tech school prior to, meandering around or having to leave the area. So my question to you is there anything still going on in that area with the task force, or is there anything realtors as a group can do to help and volunteer, maybe in mentoring high school kids to help that graduation rate?
Thanks for the offer. There is a career and technical education school dedicated exclusively for that, due to open at the start of next school year. It's a facility provided by county commissioners. I think it's the old Coca-Cola plant. So, but my high school people also say, that's great, but not enough. Because they're also saying, I need it in my own school. And my own son experienced it when he registered for 9th grade this summer. He didn't have enough choice. And he ended up in something that doesn't really get him excited. What I think's occurred historically, perhaps over the last 10 or 15 years, is we've sort of swallowed this thing about the need for skills has merged. And there's some logic and wisdom to this. Whether you're going straight to work, whether you're going to the military, whether you're continuing on, the need to communicate well, those sort of skill type things that I was outlining before are needed in all those areas. But in our zeal to move that way in our classrooms, we've been dropping off, the hands-on sorts of courses in those pieces that you described. I think we're now recognizing that. How we go back and put those in won't be quick, but our high school people are saying, I know I can increase my graduation rate if my kids have more exciting choices. So you're dead on the money with that. In terms of things that you as an organization might do, I'll hold it in reserve. I'm not sure yet, but I appreciate that. Thank you. Yes.
Just a quick question about some of the schools in West County. A couple of years ago, when the housing market slowed down, a couple of the elementary schools, Hycroft and Alston Ridge, for example, went to single track. At what point in time are they going to go back to multi-track?
I don't know, and/or if they will.
Because there's obviously a lot of building that is going on, and
Yeah.
people are concerned. For
Yep.
example, Mills Park itself is capped. Mills Park Middle has 1,800 kids in it currently.
It's a little bit of a dilemma because as it increases around the school, you either get to the point where you've got to close the doors, or then you start talking about multi-track again, so that the folks who live within sight of the school, for instance, can attend. That's a dilemma. And right now, capping is one of the pieces that's used to try and control that. I don't know what our plan will be for year-rounds, either expansions or subtractions. It does cause problems that I know you experience when families move in and year-round school's already been in session for 5 weeks. That's a problem for the board too. And even last night in review of student appeals and family needs, that's a tough one. Do you let the student go back to the one that's close, but they're going to be now, almost 7 or 8 weeks behind. I don't have a quick one for that. We did share some planning documents with the board yesterday, and the need to talk about year-round over the next few months is genuine, and we will do it. But then you've got those folks that leap out like crazy and go, oh God, here it comes. We're not even there yet. So I don't have that. Year-rounds has clearly served a need. And I know a lot of folks would like to say, let's just get them all back to single track. Well, we're using those spaces now. And 20,000 more, but that's without changing year-round calendars. So everything's woven together, unfortunately, and it's a tight weave. Yes, ma'am.
In your career, what other superintendents do you typically reach out to as a benchmark in order to help us grow our education and our platform by duplicating the type of city that we are and the growth that we experience, to where we can maybe learn from other areas that have been in the same position?
Yeah, it depends on what I think we need to learn as to where I'll go. And I'll give you a couple examples. In my prior school division, which they're called in Virginia, I was part of a group that regularly met of superintendents in the Boston area. This was a lot about business practice and process improvement, managed by some former Harvard MBAers who had their own startups, were successful, sold them off, and now they wanted to work with schools. So a lot of bright folks, both leading us, HR improvements, human capital, I mean, those sorts of things that are operational of any business. At the same time, I was part of another group of national superintendents that were very much out on the edge in terms of 21st century skills. How do you change a classroom? How do you get kids and teachers understanding how to create lessons around collaboration and things of that nature? Great people, charter school people, Catalina Foothills in Arizona, in fact, I'm going to Kentucky the end of this week, 3 of us to talk about that out of a group for Kentucky superintendents who want to explore. So it depends on the issues. The thing that I had not yet started to do, because we were not growing much at all in Virginia Beach, blessedly we were pretty stable, is who's experiencing the same kind of growth that we are now. I remember, even Virginia Beach 15 years ago was going crazy by 2,000 and 3,000, 4,000 kids a year. I'm remembering Las Vegas and how they handled it. So there are lessons to learn from these groups that have just gone crazy quickly. And I'll probably be digging into that some on the growth side of it, but I haven't started that yet. So I don't know who the peer groups are, but it wouldn't be hard to find out who's going crazy. That also have high-performing systems.
Right.
Because the beauty of Wake is that yes, it's huge, but we're still also pretty darn good. And I don't want to lose that. In fact, I want to improve it while managing growth at the same time.
With our economy, real estate-wise, I know Austin, Texas has been very similar
Good point.
to us. How do their schools and their platform compare to our educational system?
You know, off the top, Austin has a generally positive reputation nationally when you think about it. So there would be some things to learn there as well.
But I see so many people saying, I am deciding as to which area of the country I'm going to move and grow or raise my family. And education is always number one. And I think sometimes we're losing that business and those people and the kids because our foundation needs a whole lot of work. That's one.
So Dr. Merrill,
I agree. Here and then the gentleman.
thank you. Tagging on a little bit to what she was saying, certainly other states and other school systems have had difficulty paying their teachers what they need to be paid. Are there other school systems who have met that one, and do you see needing state funding too to be able to compensate our folk what they're due?
Yes, absolutely state funding, because here's one of the few differences that North Carolina experiences. It's one of the few states in the nation where school boards don't have their own levying and taxing authority. And so you do get, and I'm sure you hear the stories, folks moving down. Well, if we wanted to pay our teachers more, we put a referendum out, we increased the budget, and we paid them more. Our board can't do that. We need to go to the commissioners and say, please. And about the only tool they've got is property tax rates, which, by the way, is the lowest in the region, as you know. So when it comes to local effort, we're pretty much hamstrung. When it comes to state, we just continue to lobby for the state improving us. But as the lady mentioned a minute ago, you take a couple poster examples of, let's say, a failing teacher or data that says it's no good, and it's easy for anyone to then say, are you kidding me? Why would we pay to raise these people's salary? So you can take a negative position pretty easily if you choose to, which is what we're experiencing right now. The gentleman.
So just kind of adding to that regarding the budget, it sounds like if the bond referendum passes, then the capital expense part of the budget is taken care of for the time being, more or less.
Yeah.
Okay, so the operational part of the budget is, and teacher salaries being the primary component of that, are kind of the issue regarding budget. is appealing to state legislation and/or the county commissioners the best and/or only option we as citizens have to say, you know, this needs to happen, or and/or does it matter where the funding comes from, either or?
I think it is your best next option. If the referendum passes, then I think you've got a community that's saying in its own way, you know, we're supporting public schools here. The next project is our people. And whether it be pressure at the state, starting with our delegation, working even through the governor's office, and/or commissioners, who I hear some rumblings about an agreement that they might even be talking among themselves, we need to look at our employees next, and/or portions of our county that have greater need than others. So there's some sensitivity, I think, right now on the part of the commissioners that needs to be the next area of focus. I'm encouraged by that at least. But I think you're dead on target in terms of where you go to bring pressure and concern. It's local commissioner level and it's elected level beyond that. Did I point to someone else? I've never gone to this side, so let me go there and then on the aisle and then.
It's really just more of an observation. Our family is a 3-generation, almost 4-generation, well, we have 4th generation in Wake County Public Schools now. And, but the Realtor Foundation of the Triangle, your Realtor Foundation of the Triangle, through the, we have a scholarship committee. And I don't think it's readily known, but the Realtor Foundation awards at least $7,000 worth of scholarships to high school seniors. I've had the privilege of serving on the committee for 2 years, and even though we have a lot of negative problems in this community, from the applications that we have received, it is just astounding, one, the grade averages as these children are obtaining, even without the weighted grades. Two, the inspiration that they are holding in their volunteer hours and their family core values. These students are going out to other states, to wonderful universities, and showing an exemplification of North Carolina's or Wake County's capabilities of what we have and what these wonderful teachers and principals are doing. And these children, well, I can't say children, I don't know when they sleep. They are volunteering 25, 40 hours a week. They are starting their own foundations. I just wish everybody could have a glimpse of what we have seen. And they are going international. They're spending summers across to other countries. And so even though we've had a lot of issues and a lot of heartaches and problems, we're on a good road. And congratulate your seniors, congratulate your high school students for what they are doing, and continue to do it. Okay.
Nice, thank you.
When I first started as a realtor in 1988, when I was working with all of town customers, they all said that I would need to look for private school for my children because of the reputation of the Wake County or North Carolina schools among the bottom of the U.S. And I told them that not in Wake County, because Wake County is above national average. Both of my kids graduated from the magnet program, and my daughter was a top scholar in NC State. So I said, look at me. Both of my kids went through the public education. But my question is, what will be the future of the magnet program? If any of my customers has asked me, should I send my kids to the magnet program or should I send them to the regular school? And the second part of the question is charter school competing with the Wake County school system for the money?
My own observation, my own belief, not based on discussion or strategic planning, the magnets need to be here and need to stay. Do we need to shift them and repurpose and perhaps relocate as part of our changing community? Yes. And I think that's the challenge for us administratively with the board. But they are a good tool of choice for families. Charters, Charters do skim off some of our students, but it's choice. Charter's no different than another form of choice, just like a pay-for private school. Charters are here to stay. They come in shapes and sizes. They can be abysmal or they can be successful. So I don't think any of us spend any more time worrying about the charter competition. It is another form of choice in Wake County. It's going to be here. If anything, it raises the bar a little bit for some of our schools in terms of competition. And yet our schools don't have as many tools or resources sometimes to compete on par with the charters. Yes, sir.
In light of the legislature's position on tenure that just occurred, has the county, and part of our early discussions in bringing you here was to see your vision for the future, has the county school board had any discussion on what, if money becomes available, teacher increases may look like and how they would be presented to the teachers, be it merit-based or whatever?
Have not. That would probably be part of budget discussion as we come out of the holidays and start ramping up. I've got to also see what the competing needs are on the table at the same time. I mean, I've got to pump up resources for high school graduation rates, and you always get those 4 or 5 things that must be done at once, but you might have enough to do one of them. But there's been no discussion about that yet. It's interesting, though, that the new legislation requires me to identify 25% of our teachers who are, based on their evaluations, who are supposedly in the top group, and then offer them a 4-year contract and a $500 a year bonus. So the value of tenure apparently is worth $500 per year. But I say that as that's sort of the latest legislation. That's a pretty cold slap in the face to the teacher, because the good teacher really has never worried about that in the first place. It takes care of itself. So again, it's another stake in the heart for the teachers that is not a thank you item. It's rough. I know we're there, but I want to leave you 2 or 3 positive pieces as you walk out of here, because we covered a lot of territory. Our graduating seniors last year earned over $100 million in scholarships, up $6 million from the year before. That's a lot of savings in household pockets, $100 million. Secondly, our ACT, which is one of the 2 major assessments for college entrance, and I'm not throwing the numbers at you for 2 reasons. Number 1, I don't want to. Number 2, I don't have them. But what I can share about the ACT number is there are a few states now that require all juniors to take the ACT. We are one of those states. Compared nationally, our kids were just a little bit of a point behind the national average, including all our juniors. So let that sink in. Most of the states, college-going kids are going to take that as an elective choice of a test. Not all kids. All of our kids taking it are almost at par with the national average. The rest of whom it's by selection. That's a huge, great piece. And then the third piece is our SATs, the good old SATs, how are we doing? Give or take 100 points, we're well ahead of the state and the nation in terms of our SAT scores. We're in the mid-15-somethings, I'm thinking 15, 58, something like that, whereas state and nation are well below that. A lot of good stuff going on, and as you've said, it's easy to get caught in the quagmire of bloggers and everything else, but you got to know, a lot of great kids, a lot of great teaching, and good stuff happening in Wake. Thank you for your time today. Appreciate it.